Hi, how are y'all doing? Awesome. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for the incredible introduction. So I am the youth poet, one of the youth poet laureates for the city of Atlanta, and I was able to come down to DC to perform for y'all. So I'm really excited to share with you a poem I wrote just for this summit. So y'all are getting that special treatment, trust. But yes, thank you guys so much. And this is called "We Belong" as part of the summit theme. So here we are. Steamships billowing, the warm California sun, and the first Indian arrives, sick, turbaned, unwed, and demonized by the faces surrounding him. Watch as he melts under the sunlight, gives his labor to the country he dreamed of, for the country to drag him through the mud. But he shook their hand and climbed from baking in the California sun to the halls of Congress. Dalip Singh Sodh, the first Indian American in Congress. Today, we watch as statistics claim our heritage for trinkets, call turmeric-stained hands dirty, told, go back to your country. We play microaggression bingo in 25 spaces. Fill up quick. Aren't you meant to be good at math? Indians ruin the rankings. My child can't get into college because of you. What's your name? That's okay. I'll call you Judy instead. But silence doesn't bring equity. It only hastens us all in fervent push to the fringes of society where others decide who we are meant to be. We become caricatures, stereotypes, images of a model Asian, the work hard, get out of the way, A+ Asian, the ivy-bound, pious, perfect child. We are not these caricatures. We are not these models, and we are more than our stereotypes. Step out of the edges of society, and we can all bask in the sun. And in the sun, we belong. We burn golden and beautiful. We choose how to write our story. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita. What an amazing way to start off our plenary session for today. We're now going to move into our first panel with our very own leaders in office. This panel will be moderated by Deepti Sharma, who is a nonprofit leader and impact-driven entrepreneur who has used that experience in her journey in politics and community building. Joining her on this panel will be Michigan House Minority Leader Representative Ranjiv Puri, who is made history as the first person of color to represent his district and the first Sikh American in Michigan's legislative history. And also the first probably to dance to Diljit Dosanjh at the Michigan Democratic Convention. Durham County Commissioner Nida Alam is the first Muslim woman elected to office in North Carolina. Hamilton County's, Ohio's Clerk of Courts, Pavan Parikh, who has served in various roles as a military lawyer, Ohio Senate Minority Caucus's Chief Legal Counsel, and elected Clerk of Courts in Hamilton County. And last but not the least is Vermont Senate Majority Leader Kesha Ram Hinsdale. First elected just at the age of 22, later became the first woman of color to serve in the state Senate. Please give it up for Deepti and all these awesome elected officials.
Hello. Okay. I love the clap your hands once. I use that with my Gen Z students because they're never paying attention and they're always stuck in their phones. So I appreciated that. And we had the Gen Z poet who just laughed because she knows it's true. Anyways, my name is Deepti Sharma, and I'm going to start off with this honest moment of how scared a lot of us feel right now. The news is coming in so fast that we can barely process it. And the people that are being hurt the most in this moment are our families, our neighbors, and our community members. As someone who's been an entrepreneur, started 2 companies, I know what it's like to build something from nothing. I also know what it's like to run for office, lose, and then still continue to have to build. The glimmer of hope that I have, I come from New York City, I'm a native New Yorker, and I am so excited with that fear that we have a little glimmer of hope. We have a new mayor, we're seeing government in action, we're seeing government not just in action, but we're seeing someone who is actually doing the work. Not just saying they're gonna do it, but is actually showing up for the constituents in the way that all of our politicians and electeds should be. And I am on stage with 4 amazing South Asian candidates, electeds, who have done an incredible amount of work in their own communities, and even with what they're all facing, continue to show up even with all the craziness that we've faced today. And so I want to give a round of applause for all of you right now. I want everyone to get a little excited. I know you guys just had lunch. Come on. A little better. We could do a little bit better. A little bit better. I want to hear some more wooing. 4 South Asian candidates that defeated all the odds and showed up in ways that was maybe not expected of them. So I want to start off with a general question of, each of you came into office young, in rooms that weren't designed for you, with colleagues who had decades on you. How did you build relationships across generations, inside institutions, and what did you learn or unlearn to be taken more seriously? Keisha.
Great. Is it on? Okay. Yep, it's on. Thank you all so much. And I have to say, this is a really fitting question because when Tahir and Sarah emailed and said, you're going to be on the Next Generation panel, I said, I am not Next Generation anymore. I'm going to turn 40 this year. Because I think we all worry that we're going to get pigeonholed and stay the next generation forever. And it's like, I'm the Senate Majority Leader. I kind of have no one to turn to. And now I realize that I am missing a lot of my mentors, and it's my job to turn around and mentor others. But as you heard, I started when I was 22. So I've been in and out of the House and the Senate. I did grad school in between. I kind of grew up in the spotlight, and we were talking about having kids now. I have a 20-month-old, and my daughter just turned 3, and I've had to life engineer around my service. But when I first started at the age of 22, I remember, it's been the advice in the back of my head, since then. I was following around the former Speaker of the House, and he had started when he was 19. And I was there at the end of his 38 years of service. So I really wanted to absorb some wisdom from him. And he turned to me, he was a man of very few words, and he said, if you act like the youngest legislator, and you talk like the youngest legislator, and you set yourself apart as the youngest legislator, people are going to treat you like the youngest legislator. And guess what? They all almost have shoes older than you. So you have to figure out what you have in common and build from there. And it wasn't just politically enriching to do that. It was very personally enriching to get to know them and what kept them up at night and got them up in the morning, and not kind of try and steal the spotlight as the youngest person.
What did you do not to show up like a 22-year-old though?
Well, that, at the time, that felt like the challenging thing is, what people kind of said, everyone knows you're 22 and that you're really smart if you got here, probably smarter than a lot of us. Just keep your head down and try not to show that. And now that I'm in my 14th year and I'm Senate Majority Leader and we've had a lot of turnover, I've come to appreciate that advice in a different way. That it actually, it wasn't just wait your turn and stay down. It was, you really have to listen and learn. And frankly, with all the turnover in politics we have nowadays, more people could benefit from doing a little bit more listening and figuring out what's actually going on before they open their mouths.
Same parenting advice I give to my kids.
Well, I don't want to set a pattern where we're all going to out ourselves on ages here, but so I'm 42, and when I was 27, I was appointed as the chief counsel for the Senate Democrats in Ohio, which is a lot of responsibility because at that time, I was the only attorney we had on staff. And so every constitutional issue came before me. I had a whole massive policy portfolio that I had to deal with. So it was a similar sort of situation where it's, how do you convince, in many cases I had senators who were attorneys who'd been practicing for longer than I'd been alive. How do you convince them to listen to you and that your legal advice is the correct advice? And so it was a lot of put your head down and just do a lot of research and be good, but be deliberate. And I think it wasn't so much about keep your head down and just do the work. It was be very deliberate about how you interact in whatever space it is that you're interacting in. Sometimes younger people are very prone to take action. And the idea was, look, if you just take a pause, think about what you're about to do, present the argument, they will respect that more than just kind of jumping off and going and just doing whatever you think it is that is the right thing to do. And to be honest, I made a whole bunch of mistakes too. And I think that's just, you got to be honest with yourself sometimes. You're going to make mistakes and you got to just pick yourself back up, learn from them, and move on. Also, as the parent of too many small children, to your point about having to restructure your life, I mean, that is one of the great things personally about the job that I have right now, which is that I get to spend the time that I want with my children and my wife and still get to do a lot of really good work. So I also, one last point, I have probably the only distinction for anybody in this space of being probably the only person to be the second in a row Indian person in their job. Many of you may have heard of my predecessor who was the mayor of Cincinnati after Piraval. So that was a whole other level of negotiation and navigating of taking over for him and the expectations that one, we were the same, or two, that I got the job because we were related somehow or something. We're not related.
All brown people know each other.
All brown people are, so like that was a whole other level of things that I know I had to deal with. And I look forward to more of you having to deal with that problem.
That's great. For me, I think I share similar sentiments where I'm only next generation when it comes to political conversations. If you ask my 4 young kids, I'm very, very old to them. So I'm not the future by any means. But I do want to thank Impact for organizing this conference. It's an annual tradition that I love. For me, I feel like it's like a reunion, a high school reunion where you come back, at least for me, once a year and get to see where everyone's up to. And I want to acknowledge the poem that we had here. I thought that was just a very clear manifestation of just the struggles that a lot of Asian, Indian American elected officials face in some of these halls of power. But I think it translates just to the approach that I took as I entered my position. I came in, I think, with a balance of conviction and also appreciation. I think that I led with an appreciation for an institution that I wasn't an expert in. Seemingly half my colleagues had some level of nepotism where their dad or their grandfather served some district 50 years ago. And, I was like, my grandfather was fighting along the partition. It was a very different kind of juxtaposition to just where our stories and our perspectives that we brought to the institution. But then equally, there was the conviction of who I was and who I am and the non-negotiables that I brought to the job. And so in the poem, we talked about how a lot of times we're forced to maybe westernize our names. I came in very authentically as Ranjiv. Up in the height of the campaign and in the primary election and coming in, there was a lot of pressure for me not to run with my authentic name and maybe to shorten it for electoral advantages. And I said that there's enough people that have done that, and there's no criticism if that's where you want to go, but that's not what I'm trying to do. And there was a certain set of non-negotiables that I brought and the perspectives that I wanted to add to those conversations that existed in our state capitol. And so for me, it was always trying to kind of balance between those two things. And I think, as was mentioned, I didn't bat 1,000. There's certainly mistakes that I made along the way, and just appreciating that you spend the time to craft relationships where people understand kind of what your motives are and where you're trying to go with things. And I think that's what ended up kind of being the approach that worked for me.
So similarly, from what I'm hearing, is that what also existed for me, that there wasn't a playbook when I first ran for office. There's not really a way now that we're kind of building together through spaces like Indian American Impact for how do you run as an Indian American in the United States? How do you run as a young person? Because when I first ran for office in 2020, I was 26 years old. I'd been, an organizer on the Bernie campaign. I was vice chair of the state Democratic Party, but what had driven me to politics was losing my 3 friends to an anti-Muslim hate crime and seeing how our elected leaders weren't showing up for our communities because they didn't look like us. They didn't understand the lived experiences of our community and what we were dealing with. And I didn't plan on running for office, but when folks asked me after community members reached out, they're like, this commission seat is opening up, you should consider it. And even when I was running in the bluest county in North Carolina, people would be at the polls, Democratic voters, people working for my Democratic opponents saying, no one will vote for her because of that thing on her head. And I started researching, I was like, I need to find someone who I can talk to, run ideas by, get advice from on how do you survive and deal with these types of attacks. And that's when we realized there hasn't ever been a Muslim woman elected to office in North Carolina. And it was a path that I had to choose, if I'm the first Muslim woman when I win, inshallah, am I going to leave the door open for the next generation? How am I going to lay the steps in this campaign to make sure it's easier for the next person to come? And make sure that we're building bridges by showing up. And oftentimes I got hit with that I was too young to wait your turn, too Muslim. People told me not to be too Muslim, and I was like, it's kind of hard.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean?
I don't really know what that means. But I get questioned also, well, you're 26, or I was 25 when I was running, 26 when I was sworn in. What are you going to do when you have kids? And I was like, the same thing a man does.
Did you ask the man that?
Yeah, the same thing any man does. And the only way we're going to break those conversations and those questions is by continuing to show up.
That's right. I wear a bindi every day, and I've worn one since I got married in 2011. And it started off as a form of tradition. I saw my mother do it, I saw my grandmother do it, and it very quickly turned into something that was an act of resistance, and it became very political for me. I wrote about it in 2018, and it is crazy. Would you ask anybody else practicing any other race, religion, whatever it is that they do, you're too Muslim or you're too this? It's like, why do I have to bow down to anyone else other than just who I want to be? So I applaud you for continuing to do that and being the first Muslim and opening the doors for others. I appreciate it. Continue to be whoever you want to be, however much you want to be. I love the advice that you guys, all listen. But as an entrepreneur, I've had, I started my first company at the age of 24, 23, and a lot of times I was pitching to investors who, when they looked at me, I didn't look like the part they wanted. I didn't go to an Ivy League institution. I didn't work in consulting companies that they expected me to. I didn't have the background. But when you walk into rooms, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, politics or not, you know yourself, you know your facts, you know what you know and you know what you don't. And I think the most important is to understand that. And instead of putting your head down and waiting your turn, you can walk into rooms with confidence knowing that I know these 3 things to be true. I know these are the 3 things that I'm really good at. And I think that's most important to walk into. A lot of the times, even as South Asians, we're told, wait your turn. It's not even the halls, our own communities tell us, don't run for politics. Dr. Murthy this morning was saying his parents, when he told his parents that he was thinking about, his teacher had told him that he could be Secretary of State, his parents got worried. And they, his mom, he told his mom, and his mom literally called, his father at work and was like, you need to come home and tell him he can't do this, right? And so it's even within our own communities. And so how do we change that? How do we set the precedent for future generations that you too can be in these halls and it's not just your parents? So Nida, I'll start with you. So politics, like you said, wasn't your original path. You never imagined yourself. And, due to a hate crime of your friends, you decided to choose this path for yourself. Just last month, you lost a very close election for Congress, less than a percentage point, which was about 1,000 votes, in a Democratic primary against an incumbent. What do you want this room to understand about what it means to keep fighting after experiencing unimaginable loss, or when an election hasn't gotten your way, And how do you talk to young people about persistence when the system feels completely rigged against you?
A major thing I want folks to take away from this race is, I've talked to my friend Sarah Shah, who's here with Indian American Impact. We talk about this regularly, is that as much as it sucks and it hurts to have loss, in paper, I don't see this race overall as a loss. Because the fact that we were able to take on an incumbent who had the entire establishment behind her, our Democratic governor, our former governor, all the members of Congress, and all the Democratic members of Congress, Speaker Jeffries, all of these folks had to come in and dump over $2 million in the last 5 days of this race to try to barely scrape by a win by less than a percentage point. That's a win.
It's a huge
So
win.
that shows that the power that not only is a brown Muslim immigrant woman with Indian and Pakistani parents electable, but it's electable in the South, where so many folks take the South for granted and think that the South can't be progressive, the South is too conservative, but really it's not, because the issues that our communities are facing around being able to make ends meet, be able to put food on the table, keep a job, keep our kids in childcare, are the same issues that working families across this country are facing. And it's important for us to run for office and share that we have that lived experience as well. Because if we don't run, then the same folks are going to keep leading and our voices will never be there. And we saw in this campaign that during early voting that we had, I know Tahir has all the data, I think it was over 140% increase in Asian American voter turnout for this race. Yes.
I mean, I was phone banking, I think the week or two before the race, and I remember calling people, and they're like, yeah, we're definitely going to be there. Thank you for the reminder. And please, if you haven't signed up, find a candidate to phone bank for, because every single call matters. And I noticed, and I remember talking to Sarah and saying afterwards, I was like, people actually were thankful that I was phone banking, right? I've never heard South Asians so excited about a candidate before, and in North Carolina. So for me, it was really inspiring to have met you for the first time and then to phone bank for you, but to see how close your race was, it's a huge, huge win, and I'm excited about what comes next.
Thank you. And if I may add, it also sends the message that we came that close, we increased Asian American voter turnout so much, young people, that it shows the rest of the Democratic slate that our votes are not ones you can take for granted, that we are the winning majority.
Yeah, absolutely. Ranjiv, your family's Gurdwara was attacked in 2012 in the Oak Creek shooting. Years later, you were handed the assignment of leading gun safety legislation in Michigan. That's not just a policy portfolio that's personal for you. How do you lead on something that's so close to home and still build a coalition behind it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess just a little bit more context for the audience. That was after the aftermath of that attack was the seminal moment that I decided to run for office. When my parents immigrated from India in the late 60s, they helped establish one of the first Gurdwara in the state of Wisconsin. And so many years later, we had actually left, and I was working on President Obama's campaign in 2012 when in August of 2012, a white supremacist opened fire in that Gurdwara, killing 6 souls that day, a couple who were very close family friends. And so that was the moment that I knew I wanted to expand my platform and do something more. And so, as I guess from the prior question, when I came in, and I noted I came in with the conviction of wanting to tackle senseless gun violence and combating hate and ignorance. And so those are non-negotiables. Those are things that I set out to do. That was the purpose of why I ran for office. And I think the authenticity kind of bled through. And so, unfortunately, in Michigan, in 2023, we had a mass shooting at Michigan State University. And we had recently found ourselves in a Democratic trifecta at the state level. And so I just seized the opportunity to really build the coalition in order to tackle this. And so you call out the hypocrisy of the other side. You can't be the party of family values and then not want to combat all of the gun violence and innocent killings of kids and school shootings that's happening. And you can't be the party of faith and not want to protect our institutional religious institutions. And so we were actually able to pass legislation that combated both of those things. We strengthened our anti-hate crimes legislation in Michigan, furthering penalties, and then we also strengthened what we called the Institutional Desecration Act, which furthered protections for all faith houses in the state of Michigan. And so for me, it was really finding our common denominators of the values that we share, and that is protecting our kids and protecting our faith houses. And those are things that I think did appeal to a broader coalition in which we were able to enact really meaningful policy, some of the strongest, I believe, in the country at the state level. And for me, it was a full circle moment because I ran for office wanting to combat these things, and when we were able to do that and pass common sense gun reform in a purple state with a very rich hunting culture like Michigan, was probably the biggest professional achievement that I'll carry forward, knowing that we passed legislation that will meaningfully save lives.
How do you think about, just a quick follow-up, but how do you think about taking that, or at least inspiring others to do the same in other places? Like, have other electeds reached out to you and said, like, what did you do and how did you do it and how are we able to do this in our states?
Yeah, well, there's no quick follow-up with an elected official, right?
I know. I set myself up for that one.
But I know, and I've told people, if you can pass common sense gun reform in a state with both the geographical diversity of Michigan, because we have this whole upper peninsula that people seem to forget about, and also the ethnic diversity. Truly, you can pass it anywhere in the country. And so we've helped shape legislation in many other states, and I think some of the laws we passed has become model legislation.
That's amazing, thank you. Bhavin, you serve in an office that most people can't describe on the spot. I have to admit, I had to look it up myself.
Honestly, I probably couldn't have the day that I took the job, so I've learned a lot about it being there.
Well, that's because you got the job because of your,
Well, because of my cousin.
Yeah, your cousin. But it touches the lives of people in a lot of incredible ways: court records, access to justice, how the system actually functions, for everyday people. How do you make the case to young South Asians who have now been told they need to be the next Mamdani because they all have to be mayor or congressional leader or something, but how do you encourage them to think about politics on the most local level?
Well, I think on the most basic level, no offense to anybody in the room, and this is going to be slightly offensive, it's where all the actual governing happens is at the local level, because a lot of the decisions that are being made that impact our daily lives, they are coming from your school boards as to what's happening at your schools. They're coming from your city councils, your mayor's office. They're coming from the local offices that are responsible for implementing the laws that our legislative friends do pass at the state level. They have to be implemented, and that is what you are doing in a local office. So for you to understand a little bit about the work that we do at the Hamilton County Clerk's Office, taking a step back, Hamilton County, Ohio has approximately 830,000 people in it. It's the third largest county in Ohio, with an Asian population of like 2%. So there's not a whole lot of us, but we do have 2 countywide South Asian elected officials and the mayor of our largest city. So I count that as a win. But the work that we do then affects all those lives, because I am one person in charge of a large organization. We have about approximately 220 employees, a $47 million budget. Over 100,000 cases are filed in Hamilton County every single year in courts for which we work with. And so what that means is every single decision that myself and my senior team makes has a direct impact on people. When you are in the local executive office, everything you do matters. For us, it not only matters to the 220 employees, but those tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that we touch every single year. And so what I would encourage people to think about is, look at these local offices, because you kind of just get to make decisions and then do stuff. And you can have maximum impact on people's lives. If for 100,000 cases, if we shave 5 minutes off of the processing for 100,000 cases a year, that is 4 people's worth of jobs time in a year. That is cost savings, that is time savings, that is time and energy we can devote to other issues. Because at the end of the day in the justice system, The color of justice is green. If you have money, you get access to a completely different system than regular, normal, everyday people do. So if we can take that time savings and level the playing field and make the system more fair, we can do really big things to help out our entire community.
I love that. Keisha, I know you've touched upon this a little bit, but you were 22 when you first got elected. You are now, yeah, I felt that. You're like, yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago, but not that long ago. You're not that old. You're very young still. I'm turning 40 as well. I'm aging myself, I guess. But what would you tell yourself, like, what is it that you know now that you wish you knew then?
I think others have said there's no shortcut, there's no hack through making those important mistakes and maybe failing spectacularly a couple of times. That's probably the best way to learn and to sort of maybe humble yourself in the way that others might be perceiving you need to do to go along and address your liabilities in the future. So I think, now you look at a lot of people who've made it to Washington or to places of power, and we hold on to the Zorans, we hold on to the AOCs, but it was a lot of just continuing to show up every day and not give up. Like there's really not a lot of overnight successes in our world. And in our political world, but in most places that you tend to feel like, wow, they just became famous one day. It's a lot of going from local government to state government and really, or that's when you're at your best, is when you're really learning what levers you can pull. So now as I find myself in a role leading the Senate through probably some of the hardest times Americans have had to govern through, I'm able to tell my colleagues, hey, I know a lot of things are grabbing your attention, but people really only feel the impact if we change the budget, or we change the criminal code, or we change the tax code. It helps to know what the job actually entails. And so whereas I might have been one of those people who said, I just want to be on a rocket ship to the moon, now I feel really good about having years of government experience and actually knowing what I'm doing and not just sort of tweeting. I haven't been on Twitter in years, but trying to find a soundbite to encapsulate what's happening. People need real change that they can feel, and there's a real rigor to being in elected office and in a leadership role and trying to protect people from harm right now. And so, whereas before I might have just been in a hurry to get somewhere, now I just feel extremely useful. I'm grateful for all of the people who invested their perspective in me so that I can be useful to others right now.
I love that. Being very intentional with where you're at and what you're doing. So we have 4 parents on the stage, and I have 2 questions. A, how do you balance being legislators and being parents at home? Because all my friends that I know that are parents are constantly exhausted, and all my friends that are electeds are also constantly exhausted. So A, how do you balance? But 2, how does your parenting show up in your legislation? How do you prioritize the things that you're working on, and do your kids influence your legislation? Like, are they asking for more toys everywhere and basketball courts? Like, what are they doing? What are they asking for?
I'll start. So I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I am so tired all the time.
Constant state of exhaustion.
Constant state of exhaustion. And even coming here, I flew out this morning instead of coming in last night because I wanted to make sure that I was at a soccer game yesterday. How it shows up for me in our office is I know how much that time with my kids means to me. And I know how much, my wife is an OBGYN, so we're balancing her schedule as well. It's very complicated. But how it shows up for me is I am very aggressive with our team of your family comes first, and with our policies of we will pay for parental leave And if you're in a leadership role, you bet your ass you're taking all that time. Because I need you to set an example for the rest of this organization that you will take that time. That family is important. That when somebody is going through the questions, I don't know, is the work going to be okay? You will take that time. It is a priority of this office that we take care of our families, because at the end of the day, these titles are all going to go. These jobs are all going to go away. At the end of the day, your family is what matters, and that is the culture we're trying to bring in. And because of that, I think we get a much stronger organization, because people know that we're taking care of them.
I can say this is an area that, probably being a DSC elected official, we have a huge leg up over other folks, because my parents live right next door to us.
Built-in childcare.
Yes. My dad is here right now, and honestly, but that's been a saving point for me and my husband, because when I first ran in 2020, I think my husband he was still in law school. And then they were just like there cooking meals for us, all those things. And then when I was pregnant with Alia in 22, they were our support system. They've been our support system through all of it, and been able to step in, like when we have a last minute county commission meeting, or I have a meeting and Tokir's not home from work. Just like, now that Alia is 3.5 and Abdul's about to be 2 in a few weeks, they're old enough now that I can open the front door, and I call my parents, I'm like, open your front door. The kids are on their way. And they'll just run across the front lawn over to their house.
Amazing.
It's a lifesaver. And people always ask my husband, they're like, is it weird being neighbors with like that close to your in-laws? He's like, this is amazing.
You're like, I can get alone time. I can go to the bathroom without one of them opening the door.
But it definitely also impacts the way that I govern. Like when I was pregnant with Alia, I was running for office at the time, and I had gone through like a long spell of like fertility struggles. And so it was really exciting news for us, but we had also just announced my campaign. What am I supposed to do now? And we had to figure out when is the right time to announce the pregnancy, and preparing ourselves for folks who are gonna say like, oh, well, why are you running for office when you should be home with your kids, those type of things. But that's why we normalized talking. I talked about my fertility journey. I talked about my miscarriage. I talked about my pregnancy, because it's important for not just like women in general to see it, but especially South Asian women. We were talking about this before, of like that stigma that's around being, about having fertility struggles, about being mothers. To normalize that for the next generation, and even older generations. I had women come up to me who were like 50, 60, 70 years old, who would tell me like, thank you so much for telling your story, because that's what I went through when I was younger. And like I had no one to talk to. And now with Ali and Abdul, who they're future Durham Public School students, and we fund our public schools significantly at the county level. It's a big thing now. I'm like, I want to fund our public schools even higher. Obviously already cared about them, but now it's like I have a vested interest. This is my kids' schools, that I want them to have educators who are paid fair wages. I want them to have classrooms that are equipped with the best technology and resources. And I want that for every child, no matter their zip code, no matter what their parents' employment status is, immigration status. Every child deserves that.
And I love that you used your own story to start normalizing the conversations that we need to start having, right? Like fertility issues, but like just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I can't serve. Just because I'm pregnant now doesn't mean I won't show up even when this child comes. If anything, I'm gonna be here even more.
For me, undoubtedly, my keys to success are my wife. I married up. She's just been a phenomenal partner for us. We have 4 kids. We have 9, 6, 3, and a newborn baby girl. For me, my children have made me a better legislator in many different ways. And so I think first and foremost, I made a promise to my oldest 2 when I first assumed office that I would be home. I'd either see them every night for dinner, or I'd catch them at breakfast. So in Michigan, in Lansing, we have a full-time legislature. Not many states do. I think Pennsylvania, California, maybe a couple others do. But there's a whole other side to the job in the evening and night hours, where lobbyists wine and dine you, and you can really get consumed with that life. When I go to work, I'm the Honorable Leader Puri. people are opening doors, buying you dinner. It's really easy to get consumed in that life. I'm one of the very few legislators that doesn't have an apartment there. I drive home every single night. Actually, one of my claims to fame in Lansing is that I've never spent the night in Lansing. And what happens is when I go home, I'm no longer Leader Puri, I'm Dad. One of the boys inevitably will come up and punch me in the gut or something, and my wife will tell me to take out the trash, and I would get yelled at. And it humbles me, and it makes me remember every night that, again, that same conviction of why I decided to run for office and what that means. Secondly, with the 4 pregnancies that we've been through, I've gotten a firsthand view at just how incredibly difficult that process is. And obviously, we'll never know kind of the full burden, but can very easily understand the complexity that women have to deal with in that. And unfortunately, with this latest delivery, my wife experienced some really severe heart complications. And so, which allowed me to kind of just learn more about this particular condition that's very rare, and I was able to bring some more legislative attention to that. And thirdly, just the joy of kids and the perspective that they bring to your life, right? There are so many things about life that you view very differently because you are a parent, and they just enrich your life, put you in places. I meet other parents at their sporting events and just get to meet people outside your normal dialogue that can help just share perspectives that you wouldn't normally get. And I think all of that translates to better legislation. And obviously the downside is the lack of sleep, but it's nothing coffee can't fix.
So I haven't been able to make it to Impact in a few years, but some of you have heard me say that my Indian immigrant father and my Jewish American mother ran an Irish pub in Los Angeles, and that's where and how I grew up. And so when people say to me now, gosh, this must be so hard, it's like, I think the barista at Starbucks has it harder than I do. People still have to listen to me even when there's a toddler like smushing a banana into my dress. They have to act like that's not happening and carry on. And so, I think every time I feel like, what am I doing? What am I doing to my kids, dragging them to what they call the Golden Dome? What am I doing? Yesterday, I brought my daughter to a Universal Unitarian church with me to pick up a check because we're really close to raising $1 million in our state for an immigration legal defense fund that has been really changing the conversation about immigration legal representation, and we have great judges who have been leading and fighting back on, some of the most heinous free speech violations, et cetera. We have Rumeysa Ozturk and Mohsen Madawi, and she has no idea, what's going on when I get that check, but she says, Mommy, I want to hold the check that helps people. And
She sees you.
I mean, she sees me, it's like, what a gift that she gets to share in what I do every day. And I think I'm lucky I'm in a pretty low judgment state. But if you can get past, the judgment of thinking, oh my God, I'm a mess, and I, have a child screaming in my ear while I'm trying to get something done, then inevitably by the end of that week, someone will come up to you and say, that's the most inspiring thing I've ever seen. Thank you. Now I can think, about what's possible. And it really changes your sort of thinking like, I am torturing these children, into, wow, this is just existing as a mom in a space where, I was the first pregnant legislator in 20 years, the first woman to chair the Economic Development Committee, and to do that from a hospital bed, or to do that while we're passing universal child care or ending single-family zoning in housing, and just saying like, no, we're going to focus on families, with everything we have. That's just made a huge difference. And so, I mean, really, we were saying there's never a good time to have kids. life engineer, find the right partner, and do it and lead at the same time. Do it and run a business at the same time, because there's never going to be the perfect moment, and your kids need to see you struggle and triumph.
Yeah, I think that's really, really essential. I went back to work within 3 weeks of having both kids, and I thought I was crazy. I was. I still think I'm crazy for having done that, but I think my kids seeing me doing all the things, being in the spaces that I want to be in while doing and like building for community is essential for not just them, but for everyone else that wants to continue building. I know we had 1 minute left like 5 minutes ago, but just literally one last question, just because I want any young folks in the room. We see South Asian presence growing. We see that in all the electeds that are already here, the electeds that are on this stage. What are you doing to ensure that this momentum continues? Just one sentence. I know that's like, you can't do that, but you can. I believe in all of you. One sentence.
Do I have to start with the one sentence? I had it and it was good. But, you really have to look back just as much as you look forward. And you really have to think at the end of the day of our ancestors, and that they fought for, being able to have you just be in an open field and transfer peace, transfer power peacefully. Like, they want the same things. They want the same things. They fought for the same things for you to be where you are today. So it really, who are you not to be the first, and then to find folks to come after you?
I think from that sense, as a community, we just have a responsibility to each other to remind everyone, to your point, there is never a good time. You just need to take advantage of an opportunity and go, and we will all be standing beside you and behind you to keep pushing you, because we need more of you.
For me, it's just increasing civic engagement, breaking down those stereotypes that exist in our communities about steering kids away from pursuing, political science as a major or getting involved. I represent Canton, Michigan, which I tell people is the Sugarland of Michigan. But in maybe in a decade, I think Sugarland will be the Canton of Texas, the way things are headed. But we have I have a internship program for high school students that's predominantly Indian and Asian students. And every quarter we matriculate, 15, 20 new kids. And people who, this will be their first foray into politics and just learning how institutions work.
I'd say this is something that I do, and I'm sure all of my colleagues here do. What I would ask that everyone here also join in is that have the difficult conversations with your aunties and uncles, your cousins, your friends who say that they don't vote, who say that their vote doesn't make a difference, because that's how we're going to make it easier and easier for the next generation. Because if our own community is not coming out and showing up to vote for us, then we're not doing things right. We need to get our community out to vote so that the next generation is winning overwhelmingly because the Desi community showed up to vote.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepthi, and all of our 4 awesome superstars representing us across the country. How lucky are we to have all of them holding the door for us and representing us? Thank you. Thank you, all of you. It's now time for our fantastic keynote by someone who is blazing a trail for all of us at the federal level. Congressman Suhas Subramaniam proudly represents Virginia's 10th congressional district as the first South Asian member of Congress from the great state of Virginia. Put your hands together for Congressman Suhas Subramaniam.
Hi. Thank you all so much for having me here today. I see a lot of great friends and familiar faces. First of all, anyone from Virginia in the house? I see we have our Lieutenant Governor, Ghazala Hashmi, here. Let's give her a big round of applause. And I saw somewhere Kannan Srinivasan, the state senator who replaced me in the state senate. Give him a round of applause. If you are a Virginian, don't forget, if you haven't voted yes yet, vote yes tomorrow to even the playing field. I know there's a lot of conflicting advertising happening in the DMV, so vote yes, don't guess. That's been my motto the last week. But I was asked to be here, one, because anytime there's an Impact Summit, I try to be there. Impact has been with me since the very beginning, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my journey, because that's what they asked me to talk about. But I just want to say, first of all, how impressed I am. I came a little bit early to hear the previous panel. I'm just so impressed with all of them and impressed with all of you for all the work you're doing and all the amazing candidates we have up and down the ballot all across the country. And it's because of the work of Impact and because of you all stepping up, even when it's can feel a little lonely sometimes. That's the reason why we have had so many gains all across the country. I think the theme of this conference is We Belong, and I'll tell you that a lot of people have told me many times that I don't belong. I don't belong in Congress. I don't belong in this country. I don't belong in many places that I am. But the reason the theme is We Belong is because we absolutely belong. There's many of us, many of you in the halls of Congress or across the country in state houses or in the governor's mansion or lieutenant governor's mansion. And so many of the elected officials who are here to talk to you all and join you all are here because we want you to know that you very much belong and that we will be leaders if we want to be, and we will make sure that we will inspire another generation and this generation. So when I was growing up, I just talked to someone who's in the 9th grade and a few others who are in middle school, and I'm just so impressed by that because politics was not part of the conversation in my house. Many of y'all may have had the same experience, but I never thought about politics until college. But I was told that talking about politics was not polite. It was not what you're supposed to do, but I will tell you that even if it's not polite, we need to be having conversations. But growing up, that wasn't part of my experience until college. I got involved when a hurricane hit the city I was living in, New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, and that's when I decided to drop my pre-med, which my parents didn't love, and go and major in philosophy, which they didn't love either. But that sort of launched my career path, and I worked on Capitol Hill, and I left, and it just kept pulling me back in. And I felt like public service, no matter what I was doing, it was just a draw to me. And so that was my calling, and I know for many of you all, it's your calling as well, which is why you're here. But the first time I ran, I didn't know where to start. I'd been involved in campaigns before, but I wanted to run for the state house. And we actually have a pretty solid Indian American community in my district, but not enough to win an election, certainly. And we never elected an Indian American or South Asian in Virginia before, certainly not at the state or federal level. And so when I was starting, a lot of people, the Indian Americans, thought that I was going to lose. And so many of them didn't even vote for me, or they voted for other candidates who were South Asian when I was running. And so think about it, many people talk about, oh, well, when they call me, they say, well, my district has a lot of South Asians, so this is my path to victory. I actually lost the South Asian vote when I ran. And I think I've lost it a couple of times because other South Asians run and split the vote. But I won all the other communities. And I didn't win it by running away from being who I am, which was Indian American and South Asian and even Hindu. I ran very much as someone who was proud to be those things, but had a lot of ideas that would help them. And so one of the things that I've noticed since being on Capitol Hill is that the general public and voters and people really appreciate authenticity. And so if you are planning to run or you're in your campaign right now, even if your community you don't have very many South Asians or Indian Americans or whatever, be yourself. I think people will respect you a lot more if you're authentic and you're true to yourself and you don't run or hide from who you are. When they pick up that you're flexible when it comes to what you think you want them to be or your own values, people will pick up on that and they will not vote for you. They will run away from you. And so don't hide who you are. In fact, be authentic to who you are. And that's what helped me when the 70% of people who weren't Asian American that first state house race. And the second, Impact has a lot of great resources, and I used some of them when I was running. I worked a lot with a lot of the leadership. At the time, a woman who's now in high places, Aruna Miller, was the director at Impact Fund, and she's now the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, but she helped me a lot, and she was a great mentor. And you have so many great mentors in the room now, and please reach out to me if I can be so helpful to you in any way. But just by getting good advice and soliciting good advice, taking good advice will be really important in your races. And so if someone's saying, you know, you need to be knocking as many doors as you can because this is your path to victory, take that advice. And that's the second piece of advice I would say is work really hard. People, it doesn't matter, you know, how old you are or who you are, just get out there and just talk to as many people as possible. My first race, I knocked on about 10,000 doors in Loudoun County, Virginia. I had to go through 3 pairs of shoes, and you've got stories to tell, but even now, 6 or 7 years later now, I still meet people at the grocery store or farmer's market who remember me knocking on their door 6 or 7 years ago. And it certainly helped contribute to me getting elected to Congress later on because I had talked to so many people at their doorstep, and I'd gone to so many community events. And so just no matter what situation you're in, the universal language of politics is hard work and just getting out there and getting to people to know who you are and getting to know them too. And then the third thing I've always told people is, you know, be collaborative, not just in your campaigns, but also if you do have the honor of serving your community. And so I've always said the best advice, the best legislation, it comes from people in the community. So I had an 8th grader write one of my pieces of legislation in the state Senate. He wanted to start a HOSA club in his middle school, and in Virginia that wasn't allowed. And so he asked me if I could help, and I said, well, why don't you write a bill for me? And so we wrote a bill together, and it got signed into law by a Republican governor. And so that's the kind of thing that we can do if we actually are collaborating with our communities and you're actually listening to your community. And you know, whether it's you're on the local council or your lieutenant governor, all of the people I talk to who've been successful were so because they listened to the community and really cared and were responsive. So I will be around for a little bit, but I just want to thank everyone for all you're doing. I want to thank Impact and all the people who make this conference possible and make it possible for people like me to get elected, because Impact was critical to my success in getting elected to Congress. But thank you all, and looking forward to meeting all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman Subramaniam, for your inspiring words and proven leadership in Congress. Before we move on to our next portion of this session, I just want to do a little housekeeping. If you can limit any conversations to 0, so we can give our undivided attention to our awesome speakers and our upcoming panel, which you do want to listen to because it's going to be really awesome. We have a fantastic panel showcasing the tremendous power of youth organizing in action. Please welcome the following panelists to share how they have made strides as youth organizers in shaping how we safeguard and expand our democracy. Sohali Vadula is the president of College Democrats of America and someone who has worked at every level in different parts of the country. Shiv Duggar currently serves as the head of elections and data analytics at SATH, an organization launched for South Asian youth within just 24 hours of the 2024 election. Abhi Ranganathan, who is currently serving as the Voter Engagement Director of NCAAT, North Carolina Asian Americans Together. And last but not the least is Krish Korapati, currently serving as the North Carolina Youth Director for SAFA, South Asians for America, and President of North Carolina's Association of Teenage Democrats. These superstars are charting the way for South Asian youth organizing, and so let's welcome them, Sohali, Shiv, Abhi, and Krish.
Hey everyone, my name is Sohali Vadula. I'm the president of the College Democrats of America. I got my start in politics with the high school Democrats, mainly when Senate Bill 8 passed when Roe versus Wade was overturned and Texas had an abortion bill go into effect. And since then, I've gotten into Democratic politics through other causes as well, because abortion was just a start, but I realized there's other issues that we have to fight for, especially ones that affect our community the most. About a year ago, when I was the vice president of the College Democrats of America, the president at the time was also Indian American, and there was an article that came out which said that 2 Indian Americans were elected to represent the College Democrats of America in the Democratic National Committee for the first time ever. And at the time, it didn't really make me realize what a big deal it was, but I've also realized that it's just the beginning. And I'm so proud to be sitting here with fellow Indian American leaders that are paving the path for the future of American politics. And so we'll start by having everyone introduce themselves and why they got into politics.
All right, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Krish Korapati. I'm the president of the North Carolina Association of Teenage Democrats and the North Carolina Youth Director for South Asians for America. The big reason I got into politics was because when I was in 8th grade, I had bilateral knee surgeries. And 3 days after that, we went on my school's Washington, D.C. trip. And the entire experience led me to realize just how inaccessible healthcare was, but also the importance of advocating for that and trying to make a difference. And then every time I got into that advocacy sector, I realized I was the only young person there. And so from there, most of my work has centered around uplifting that youth vote, because I think that's the most critical thing that any demographic can have, including all the amazing South Asians that are here and all the young people, is that having that adequate representation. So that's been my primary driver throughout all my work.
I'm Shiv. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm currently serving as the head of elections and data analytics at SOTH, which is an org that tries to uplift South Asian youth, get them involved in politics. I got my start in politics working for a South Asian candidate in a South Asian city, and I continued in this field because when I went canvassing, when I talked to South Asians, they're like, we're not gonna vote for the South Asian candidate. What will the white people say? And that was just so astounding to me because I live in Rokana's district. I'm like, our House representative is South Asian. And I realized that we've gone so far, but there's still so much that we still need to do in order to continue this mission of, building a better America for everyone.
Hi everyone, my name is Abhi Ranganathan. I'm the Voter Engagement Director at NCAT, North Carolina Asian Americans Together. We're a civic engagement organization uplifting the voices of Asian Americans in North Carolina as well as the youth. I got into this work when I was around 16, doing direct service work for human trafficking and domestic violence. Realized that there's not a lot of help going on in the legislation for women and people who are affected by these things, and that's how I got into politics. I'm very excited to have a conversation with you.
For our first question, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that is facing the South Asian community when it comes to being more active in the democratic and political processes?
All right, starting off pretty big. I'd say the biggest obstacle to the South Asian community in general is a lack of knowledge/access. I remember when I was first trying to get involved, there's always, of course, the stigma against getting involved in politics that I think so many speakers already have talked about. But it's also, there's always a question of, okay, I'm interested in this, I don't know how to take action, so I'm just gonna give up. And so I think bridging that divide and creating that infrastructure for people to become involved is the most critical thing we can do right now. Making more discourse around that and stigmatizing it less will allow people to have the opportunity to become involved and see it right in front of their eyes.
Yeah, to continue what Krish said, I definitely agree. I think what we need is to, talk to the South Asian community and help them realize that we are a part of this country and that no one can take that from us. And when people try to take that from us, we need to fight back. And that stigma is still present. I talked about it earlier. And even though South Asians are supposedly a model minority, that doesn't exempt us from racism. And I think the sooner we realize that, the better.
I also think that I agree with what you guys said, but not a lot of us get knocks on our doors, and when we do in October, we're like, who are you? I don't know you. And it's all about relationship building. We talked about building community in the beginning. You're not gonna get anywhere with our community if you're not building a relationship and building trust, and that starts early. And a lot of campaigns and parties forget that we need trust and relationship building.
Adding on to that, I think it's also part of the reason that, in our community, politics is seen as something that isn't for us, right? Like we weren't taught and encouraged to go into these fields that other groups may have been able to. And historically, we've always been underrepresented in politics. So I think changing that kind of narrative that like politics is for everyone, politics requires everyone to be represented for a healthy democracy to work and function well. We all have to be represented. So the next question is, switching to young people, why do we think that young people are getting more and more apathetic when it comes to politics and, specifically South Asian youth?
I think easily the biggest reason is because we only see what's going on at the federal level. A lot of times on the social media networks that young people use to get their information, the biggest thing that's being spotlighted are what's going on at the federal level. And when there's this much polarization and this much sentiment against the other side, it's very hard to want to get involved because you're seeing so much hatred. But when you look at politics, I think most politics are defined at the local and state level. As a citizen, you are affected at the most depth at the local and state level. But that's not what people see, and that's the reason I think we have apathy. When you allow people to recognize that there are so many decisions being made that affect your life directly at the local and state level, it becomes a lot more accessible and a lot less polarized for people to become involved and see less apathy and pay more attention.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I do think that this apathy comes from a place of, cynicism towards the political process, where people see what's going on in DC, and no offense to our lovely elected representatives, but it's a mess. People see all the negativity and the toxicity, and they're like, why should I take any of my time? I just want to scroll TikTok instead. I mean, I get that. I want to do that too. But I think people, and in the past year especially, have started to realize that no matter what you think about politics, politics is always going to think about you. And that's going to be, and that realization is the first step to getting young people engaged and properly, familiar with the political process.
That, and I also think that young folks are just tired of being told something and not being able to get it done. I think that's a huge thing. Everyone talks about Zoran Mamadani. He's saying and doing what he was saying as well. With us in North Carolina, I don't know if Nidalam is still here, she was very exciting for our youth, but we had youth get out and vote for her because she was on campus. She was on the streets talking about all the policies and legislation and activism. And that gave people hope, and that made people go and vote. So it's all about education. It's about having candidates go out there as well and building this trust that I keep going back to.
Yeah, the next question I have is for Shiv and Krish. Why do we think that so many South Asian men are shifting to the right in recent trends that show since 2024? And obviously this is part of a larger trend with younger men in general, but why do we see this specifically with South Asian men as well?
Okay, so I'm going to start by saying what I think is going to be the biggest advantage for us in 2026 and in 2028 is that we have so much ammunition to campaign against what's going on right now because nearly everything going on is messed up. And so what I think often we try to do is push one narrative or push one idea or one policy area that we have a problem with. But a lot of times, young men, South Asian young men, have extremely different ideas. They have extremely different priorities. So I think what we need to do to win back that young South Asian vote is to ask them first. The first question should always be, what is your biggest priority? What is what you care about most? Not what's the most mainstream thing going on, because then we can meet them in the middle, and I'm telling you, we've got a way to attack what's going on at the federal level in pretty much every single area of policy. So being able to have that conversation instead of just what's being talked about in the mainstream is, I think, the most critical way to win back that young vote.
That's such a loaded question, and it's one that we at South have been trying to answer for the past year and a half, which is that objectively in the 2024 election, South Asians, young people in general moved to the right. Why is that? I mean, I can't give you a straight answer, but some things that we have seen is that voters don't think about left and right the way we do, and that goes for young people, for young South Asians. And more than like a shift to the right, we saw a lot of abstention and people who just felt disillusioned by the political process. And they see someone like Trump who, I mean, he lies, and he says things like, I'm gonna make IVF free for everyone. I'm gonna help you build wealth. I'm the only candidate who cares about you. And that speaks to a lot of people who are like, why not? We'll take a chance. Just like Krish is saying, it's on us to fight against that narrative and to really prove to people why it's so harmful, why the Trump administration has been so harmful. But as you said, I don't think we're gonna need to do so much of that considering whatever's going on right now.
Yeah, I want to add to that real quick also. One thing that Trump did really well in his campaign is that he met young men where they were. He got on the Joe Rogan podcast and talked about his campaign there. I think the biggest thing that anyone can do to win is to meet their voters where they are. And for young men, it's that we're chronically online. And so being able to target those sort of newfound areas of interest of media consumption for young men is, I think, the most critical strategy to campaigning.
I'm sorry, but I do want to add to what you said, because the same is true for South Asians. I was in Texas in November 2024. I always go to Thanksgiving into Frisco, which is a very heavily Indian suburb. And I was shocked to see advertisements for Vote Republican, Vote Trump in Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, and Kannada. And credit where credit is due, the Republican Party did an amazing job in non-English advertising towards South Asian voters. The thing is, we can do that too. The biggest example of that is Zoran Mamdani's amazing Hindi and Bengali language ads that really sought to meet the community where they're at and to say that you matter. It's not, we know you speak English. We know it's not because we think that you don't know how to engage in the political process, but we want to meet you where you're at. You shouldn't be having to chase us.
We are seeing that media is playing a larger role, especially with the rise of social media. And so it's really increasingly important to meet voters where they're at. And so that is a really, really good point, especially with Gen Z. You know, everyone is always on social media. It's probably where most people get their news from, right? Whether it's Twitter, sometimes it's TikTok, Instagram. So that's where people have to be. And that includes South Asian candidates, it includes Democrats, Republicans, everyone that is trying to get the AAPI vote, and also just reaching young men and Gen Z voters broadly. I have a question for you, Abhi, which is your organization, NCAAT, is aimed at empowering and mobilizing young people. What's been the most effective in terms of mobilizing young people, and what hasn't in your experience?
Listening has been our biggest power in trusting our youth. Krish is one of our youth ambassadors, so shout out to him. A lot of the work that we do comes from listening to our youth ambassadors and our college community organizers as well. We don't need to go into their circles and tell them what they need to do. We just need to listen, support, whether it's financially, physically, mentally, for this success as well. And that's really helped us out in voter turnout for the youth, because they're gonna tell you this isn't gonna work. You know, I had a burn book idea in 2024 and they said, we don't get that. And I was like, okay, let's not do it then. So it's really helped us putting that together. I think that canvassing, phone banking, text banking is great, but the way you do it is also really important. Peer pressure for our youth isn't gonna work. But asking them, hey, I've realized you haven't voted, is everything okay? Do you need help? That's gotten so much engagement from our texts and phone calls as well. We've helped so many youth get rides, making sure they find their polling locations, because it's not about the candidate or the cause that they need help figuring out, but more so the resources and the education they need to get to where they have to go.
What advice would you give to candidates and leaders that are trying to court the youth vote?
Ooh, start early. Please don't come to them in August of opening week to ask for their vote. Go in January, have a roundtable conversation, see what issues they care about, and go from there and have those honest conversations. Be vulnerable, I think. I think that's like the biggest thing too. Like, they don't want to see a fake person on stage talking about all of these things that sound great. They want to hear real life stories and how that impacts you. And so that's truly an advice I think everyone should follow.
All right, switching to a slightly different and a bit heavier of a topic. We have recently seen the rise of racism towards the Indian American and South Asian community, especially in politics as it has become increasingly normalized, specifically on the right. How do we as a community combat this kind of racism, and especially, as young leaders that are, in these spaces as people of color?
It's what we're doing right now. Showing up, uniting together as a coalition is so critical to show we're more than just the stereotypes we see online. And I think that's a really critical distinction, that now we're seeing a rise of anti-South Asian sentiment that's increasingly on social media and online. And it's hard to combat that when it's not in a physical, direct space. But when we put things out that all, like hundreds of South Asian Americans met together, united together, and worked together to create advocacy opportunities for their membership. It's that kind of work that separates us from the model minority stereotype, that separates us from any negative stereotypes, and that allows us to find community amongst one another, to at least respond within our community to the sentiment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to add on to that point, that means that we cannot tolerate any kind of bigotry in our spaces as well. That means no matter if you are Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, Jain, Buddhist, we have to make sure that our spaces are one where we can be united and not one where we divide each other. I think of this one moment where I was at a political event in 2025. I come from a very South Asian community with a large population of Hindus and Muslims. And some of the language that I heard was quite frankly frightening, because I heard both Hindu and Muslim community leaders essentially just talk crap about the other side. And I'm thinking, we have a bigger issue than that. Both of you came to America with the promise, because America is a country where no matter your religion, no matter your race, where you can be part of something greater. And one thing, and that's why I truly believe that it's the most important thing to call out racism and to stamp it out before it ever becomes anything strong.
Be proud of who you are. I don't think that's going to be a problem for folks in the room, but I think standing together, as you said, is really important. Growing up, our parents taught us to put your head down, make sure you get your grades, go be the engineer, the doctor, the lawyer, but never stand up for yourself in that kind of realm and find your community. I truly think that our organization, we have all Asian Americans, not just the South Asian community, but to build a place where we all feel safe together is going to make us stronger. Realizing there's so many of us who are supporting each other is going to help that too. And showing up for each other is really important.
All right, moving on to immigration, which has been a really, really important topic for our community as well. A lot of organizing in the API community and South Asian community comes from the topic of immigration, because it is really important to people that come to this country as immigrants. Many members of our community have come to this country as immigrants and have built really successful, impactful lives. How can we, going forward into the midterm cycle and in the future, mobilize around this issue, especially at a time when the Trump administration has deeply weaponized this issue in a way that is hurting people, even the people that trusted him and voted for him and are now beginning to regret their votes?
Yeah, again, I think this comes back to where I said we have the advantage on nearly every area of policy going into 2026 and 2028. And I think this is one where there's a problem here, and we can communicate that to our voters. The question is, how do we communicate that to reach as many people as possible? And in terms of reaching young people, it's through social media. It's through doing what Zoran did so perfectly and engaging people through social media. It's through meeting them at the places they are, including, unserious as it may be, getting on podcasts and getting on things that actually allow you to have a conversation with the young people, to have a conversation with anyone in our community and to, again, reach them where they are. That's the most critical use of messaging that we can do.
Yeah, I agree. We need to reach out to as many people and to go to as many places as possible, but not just where we say it matters, but also what we say. We need to have a concrete policy plan for how we're going to stop what's happening now and how do we make sure that it never happens again. My state, California, when we just introduced a bill that would end tax breaks for ICE contractors within the states. I think that's a model, that's something that other states can follow. We need to make sure that people know what they're voting for, because when we give them concrete policy platforms, people are inspired. People know, okay, I'm gonna vote for them, and if they don't do this, I'm gonna talk to them again, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna make sure that this happens. And I think it's so important to engage, to be that introduction for young people, young South Asians, into the political process.
Yeah, this is a very serious topic. In North Carolina, we had ICE presence. We still have ICE presence. Like, I'm driving to work and I'm scared if that Ford Explorer is ICE or a cop or just a regular person. Last year, we did an interview with like 5,000 people through our deep canvassing efforts, found out immigration is one of the top issues in North Carolina, and I'm pretty sure it is for a lot of folks across the country. A lot of them are scared, you know, their family members need more support. They need to know more about visas and things like that. So we do a lot of like know your rights activism, as well as like panels. Anyone who needs help fixing one, let us know. We have birthright citizenship efforts that we do as well, and helping people get immunization, but really educating them on what policies are happening, keeping them active on what's really going on helps ease people's anxiety. I feel like a lot of us have anxiety right now, and that's been like a target for us to make sure people feel okay. We use immigration as an issue to get people to go vote, but immigration itself isn't just like a voting issue, it is a community issue. So a framework like that really helps people who are apathetic to go vote, realizing that this is something that's gonna affect me and my community.
Yeah, know your rights trainings are extremely important. It's something that, you know, college Democrats are engaging in, which brings me to my other question. As a leader of college Democrats, I've often seen that young people are, you know, more progressive. They're more progressive than the ordinary, you know, young person or, you know, people of other generations. But we are seeing that there are actually more young people shifting to the right, even though they seem to be more progressive, like on paper, and that's what we hear. Why do we think that is? Like, where is that gap occurring? Like, is it just on social media? Is it just with young men? Because we saw youth voter turnout went down.
Yeah, Shiv mentioned it, and so I think you said it at the end. I don't think it's the general sentiment of the young population. I think it's the general sentiment of the young people that turn out to vote. And I think that's the biggest distinction there, is that we have the winning numbers. It's just we need them to get to the ballot box. And so I think that disparity comes most broadly from a lack of turnout, from more apathy towards elections, and then not going to the polling booth because of that. So I think when we create that higher voter turnout through the wonderful work that so many organizations are doing here, like canvassing and phone banking, that's when we, specifically targeting young people, are able to bring that numbers up and show that this shift is actually going to the left.
Yeah, I mean, we touched upon it earlier, but it's a combination of so many things, including apathy. But what I'm also more interested in is talking about, yes, we acknowledge that this rightward shift is happening, but like, how do we stop this? And it's threefold. One is education. We need to meet people where they're at. Second is elections. Please, and not to steal a copyright, but run for something. There's so many races across the country where people just do not run and they're just open. And even if you don't want to run, engage in your local government, join a commission. If you're in Virginia, please vote yes. We need it. And elevation. Make sure, provide opportunities to South Asian young people, which is what we try to do. And what we see is when you give young South Asians the opportunity to choose between Palantir or OpenAI, or an opportunity to get them into government, into public service, they will take the option of public service. It's just that they don't know about those opportunities right now. And that's something that we all need to work on.
Yeah, it's all about civic engagement and year-round civic engagement. I feel like it's not just about apathy, it's about education, it's about building those relationships, like I keep saying. I think it's also about making sure they have the right resources to go vote. We see that rise in the right youth going to vote because they have those connections. It's easy when you hear Trump being like, I'm gonna, fund IVF, but you're not gonna read a 500-page economic debrief about it, nor the points about it either. And so really kind of having a support group to simplify things, to have open conversations is gonna help. I also think that with year-round civic engagement, let's not make it just about voting. Let's do other things. Let's build a culture where we talk about community issues, where we can go to city council to talk about a data center or to talk about a cultural event. Go to a Diwali cultural event because your city council is the one who throws those events. So that's really important as well.
Thank you so much for joining us on this panel today. And for any young person that might be here in this room today, I really hope that you make an effort to vote, register to vote if you're eligible to, and get involved in your community, because politics is the most influential at your community, and that's where everyone should be getting involved in, because everyone's vote and participation really does matter. Thank you, and huge round of applause to everyone that is here today.
Thank you so much to our awesome panel. How cool is our future? Yeah. Picture. And in the meantime, can we also give it up for all of our speakers for this awesome plenary session, from our first panel, Congressman Subramaniam, and our second panel. So a few housekeeping before we end this session. There's a snack break until 2:45. There are snacks in the back. Also in the back is an awesome table expo. I've gotten to meet a lot of the different folks out there, so I'd recommend all of you to do the same. Right at 2:45, there are going to be 3 action labs that you can attend. The first, you can call Virginia voters, as we've heard. They are voting on a referendum. Tomorrow's the last day, tomorrow's election day, to stop the overhaul of the House of Representatives. And it will be keynoted by Lieutenant Governor Ghazala Hashmi. The second action lab is a letters to editors. You can receive a powerful immigration briefing and learn how to write an effective letter to the editor in your community's voice and send it around to newspapers around the country. And lastly is another media training. If you're someone who likes to engage in the press or wants to engage in the press, you definitely won't want to miss this session. And then we'll reconvene back here at 4:30 for our closing plenary. Thank you so much, everyone.